feels like a test that I fail, so depressed when I can't seem to get out. But something deep inside won't let me quit.
YN felt nervous as she opened the envelope containing her latest assignment. She had poured her heart and soul into it, hoping to impress Professor Park, the tough teacher known for his harsh critiques. She scanned the paper for his comments, but all she saw was a red letter at the top, B. She felt a pang of disappointment followed by a surge of anger. How could he be so cold and dismissive of her work? She had spent hours researching, writing, and revising, only to receive such an average grade. She wanted to confront him, to demand an explanation, but she knew it was pointless. He would probably just give her one of his icy stares and tell her to work harder. She stuck the paper into her backpack and walked out of the classroom feeling dejected. She made her way to her favorite sport on campus, a cozy bench under a grand oak tree. The university campus was beautiful in autumn, with the leaves turning crimson and gold, but she barely noticed. She was too absorbed in her own thoughts. YN, a voice called out, and she looked up to see her boyfriend, Jay, approaching her with a warm smile. He was tall, with kind eyes that made her heart flutter. "Hey, Jay," she greeted him with a kiss on his cheek. Jay's arm wrapped around her waist, and they sat down on the bench together, enjoying the crisp autumn air. "You seemed lost in thought," Jay observed, concern evident in his eyes. YN sighed, her thoughts drifting back to her latest assignment. "It's just Professor Park. He's so cold and critical. I feel like he hates me." Jay chuckled, his hand brushing her hair gently. "You're just too hard on yourself. He's probably like that with everyone." YN shook her head, unconvinced. "No, he's not. He always praises some of the other students like Sarah or Mark. He even smiles at them sometimes, but he never says anything nice to me. He always finds something wrong with my work." Jay frowned, sensing her frustration. "Maybe he's just trying to challenge you. Maybe he sees your potential and wants you to improve." YN snorted, rolling her eyes. "Or maybe he's just who enjoys making me feel bad." Jay leaned in closer, his lips brushing her ear. "Or maybe he is secretly in love with you and doesn't know how to show it." YN laughed, feeling a bit lighter. Jay always knew how to make her laugh. "Yeah, right. That's the most thing I've ever heard." Jay smiled, kissing her softly. "Well, I'm glad you think so, because I'm the only one who's allowed to love you." YN smiled back, wrapping her arms around him. Little did YN know, Professor Park had been watching them from a distance, hidden behind the towering oak tree. He was known for his scholarly reputation, but had kept his emotion guarded for years. However, something had shifted inside him recently, and he couldn't help but feel an unfamiliar pang of jealousy as he watched YN and Jay together. He had noticed YN from the first day of class. She was smart, passionate, and beautiful. She had a fire in her eyes that him. He wanted to get closer to her, to know her better, to make her his. But he didn't know how to express his feelings. He had never been good at socializing. He had always focused on his academic career, neglecting his personal life. So he did what he knew best. He challenged her intellectually. He gave her tough assignments, hoping to stimulate her mind and spark a dialogue with him. He criticized her work harshly, hoping to make her work harder and improve herself. He ignored her compliments and questions, hoping to make her curious and interested in him. But his plan backfired. Instead of drawing her closer to him, he pushed her away from him. Instead of making her admire him, he made her resent him. Instead of making her fall for him, he made her fall for someone else. He watched as YN and Jay kissed under the oak tree, feeling a surge of anger and sadness. He clenched his fist, feeling a sudden urge to confront them and break them apart. But he knew it was too late. He had missed his chance. He turned away from the scene, feeling a cold emptiness in his chest. He walked back to his office alone. YN was in university library deep into her research. She had a deadline for her next assignment and she wanted to impress Professor Park with her work. She hoped that he would finally acknowledge her efforts and give her some positive feedback. She was so engrossed in her books that she didn't notice Jay entering the library. He had a takeout bag from her favorite restaurant in his hand and a smile on his face. He walked toward her, looking for her in the corner of the library where she usually sat. He spotted her sitting at a table with a pile of books and papers. He approached her quietly, not wanting to disturb her concentration. He leaned over and kissed her on the cheek, making her jump. "Hey, baby," he greeted her softly. YN gasped, turning to face him. She saw the takeout bag and his warm smile and felt a rush of affection. "Jay, what are you doing here?" "I thought you could use a break. I brought you lunch from your favorite place," he said, placing the bag in front of her. YN smiled, touched by his gesture. "You're so sweet. Thank you." They opened the bag and took out their food. Jay had ordered her favorite dish. He knew her tastes well. They shared lunch, chatting about their day and their plans for the weekend. Their laughter filled the library's quiet aisles, drawing the attention of Professor Park, who happened to be there. He had come to the library to do some research for his upcoming lecture. He was browsing through the shelves, looking for a book on post-colonial literature when he heard a familiar voice. He turned around and saw Ryan and Jade sitting at a table eating and talking. He felt a surge of irritation as he watched them. He couldn't help but notice how happy Ryan looked, how radiant her smile was, how Jay whispered sweet nothings in her ear. He felt a pang of jealousy mixed with resentment. He had always been a solitary man, preferring books over people. He had never cared much for romance or relationships. He had always focused on his academic career, ignored his personal life. But now he fallen in love with Ryan, but helpless. Professor Park's feeling for Ryan deepened, even though he tried to deny them. He found himself longing for moments when he could steal glances at her, like the time he saw her and Jay sharing a tender kiss by the fountain on campus. He felt a pang of jealousy mixed with regret. He wanted to talk to her, to tell her how he felt, but he didn't know how. He had never been good at expressing his emotions. He had always been cold and distant, hiding behind his scholarly reputation. But he couldn't keep his silence any longer. He had to make a move before it was too late. One evening, as Ryan was leaving her literature class, Professor Park approached her, his usual stern expression replaced with an unusual Ryan, he began, clearing his throat. Can I have a word with you? Ryan turned around, surprised to see him. She nodded, feeling both curious and nervous. Sure, Professor Park, what is it? He led her to a quiet corner of the hallway, away from the other students. He looked into her eyes, trying to find the right words. Ryan, he repeated, his voice low and soft. I've been meaning to talk to you about your recent assignments. I believe you have great potential and I'd like to help you improve your work. Ryan was taken aback by the sudden change in his tone. He sounded almost friendly. She wondered what was going on. Thank you, Professor Park, she said, feeling both surprised and grateful for his offer. That's very kind of you. I appreciate your feedback. He smiled. He looked more handsome. He reached out and touched her hand gently, making her heart skip a beat. I'm glad you do, he said, his eyes shining with admiration. You're a very talented student, Ryan. You have a passion for literature and I admire. You have a fire in your eyes that me. Ryan felt a blush rising on her cheeks. She didn't know how to react to his compliments. She felt a strange mix of emotion, flattery, confusion, excitement. Hey baby, suddenly Jay showed up. He greeted her with a kiss on the cheek. this?" Wine introduced Jay to Professor Park, feeling awkward. "Jay, this is Professor Park, my class professor. Professor Park, this is Jay, my boyfriend." Jay looked at Professor Park with a hint of suspicion in his eyes. He sensed something was different about the way he looked at Ryan. "Nice to meet you," Jay said politely but not warmly. Professor Park felt a surge of jealousy as he saw Jay's arm around Ryan's waist. He realized he had made a mistake by approaching her. He had exposed his feelings too soon. "I'm sorry, I have to go. I have an urgent meeting to attend." "What was that about?" Jay asked Ryan. "I don't know, he was just talking to me about my assignments," Ryan said honestly. Jay frowned, feeling uneasy. "He seemed interested in you." Ryan shook her head, dismissing the idea. "No way, he's just my professor." She smiled at Jay. "And you're my boyfriend." She kissed him softly. "And I love you." Jay smiled back, feeling relieved. "I love you too." Ryan was leaving the library feeling satisfied with her research. She had been working on her final paper for Professor Park's class, a comparative analysis of Shakespeare's tragedies. She stepped out of the library only to be greeted by heavy rain. She opened her umbrella and looked around, hoping to find a taxi. She spotted Professor Park standing by the entrance, drenched from the downpour. He didn't have an umbrella or a coat, and he looked miserable. Without thinking, she rushed over and offered her umbrella to him. "Professor Park, you'll catch a cold," she said, concern in her eyes. He looked up, surprised to see her. "Thank you, Ryan." He accepted the umbrella with a hesitant nod. He felt a warmth in his chest as he saw her smile. As they walked together towards the faculty building, Ryan noticed awe in his eyes she had never seen before. "Is everything all right, Professor?" she asked gently. He hesitated for a moment, then confessed. "I've been watching you with Jay, and it's been difficult for me." Ryan was taken aback by his honesty. She had never expected such from her stern professor. "What do you mean, Professor?" He looked into her eyes, trying to find the courage to tell her the truth. "I mean," he began, then stopped himself. He realized he couldn't say it, tell her that he loved her, that he wanted her, that he was jealous of Jay. He couldn't tell her that he was sorry for being cold and distant, that he wanted another chance. He couldn't tell her anything because she was his student and he was her professor, and it was impossible. Nothing, he muttered, and then he walked away. Vine felt a pang of sadness as she watched Professor Park walk away. She wondered what he meant by saying that watching her with Jay was difficult for him. Did he have feelings for her? Did he regret being cold and distant to her? Did he want to be more than her professor? She shook her head, dismissing the idea. It was impossible. He was her professor and she was his student. Besides, she loved Jay. He was her boyfriend and he made her happy. Or so she thought. Vine was walking to the library hoping to meet Jay there for a study date. She had a big smile on her face, looking forward to spending some time with him. She had a surprise for him. She had bought tickets for a Shakespeare play that he wanted to see. She entered the library and headed toward their usual spot. She expected to see him sitting at a table waiting for her with his books and his laptop. But instead, she saw him, another girl, who was sitting on the table. She felt a shock run through her body, followed by a surge of anger and pain. She recognized the girl as Minnie, one of the students in Professor Park's class. She was intelligent, slim, and pretty. She had always with Jay, but Vine had trusted him to be faithful to her. She realized she was wrong. She dropped the tickets and books on the floor, making a loud noise that caught their attention. They looked up and saw her standing there, staring at them with disbelief and hurt. Vine, Jay said, his voice guilty and scared. Jay, Minnie said. Vine didn't say anything. She turned around and ran out of the library, tears streaming down her face. She felt betrayed and broken. She didn't know where to go or what to do. She ran aimlessly on campus, trying to escape from the pain. She ran until she bumped into someone familiar, someone who caught her in his arms, someone who looked into her eyes with concern and compassion, someone who whispered her name softly. Vine, it was Professor Park. There was already a week after Vine found out that Jay was on her. On that day, Professor Park gave her comfort and offered to drive her back home. However, following that incident, neither of them engaged in conversation. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. He had become more distant and barely acknowledging her in class or in his office hours. He had stopped giving her feedback on her assignments, only writing a letter grade on them. He had avoided eye contact and small talk, only speaking to her when necessary. She wondered what was going on. What if he was angry with her for some reason? She wondered if he had lost interest in her as a student, if he had something to hide. She decided to confront him about it and knocked on his office door the next day. Come in. Professor Park called his voice. Vine entered, determined to get to the bottom of the matter. She saw him sitting at his desk, surrounded by books and papers. He looked tired and stressed, with dark circles under his eyes and a frown on his face. Professor, I couldn't help but notice that you've been acting strangely lately, she said, trying to sound casual. Professor Park sighed, defeated. He knew he couldn't keep his secret any longer. He had to be honest with her, even if it meant risking everything. He turned to face her, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and longing. YN, I need to be honest with you. I've developed feelings for you, and it's been to see you with someone else, he said, his voice low and soft. YN's eyes widened in shock. She had never expected such a confession from her cold and distant professor. The realization that he had been jealous of her relationship with Jay left her speechless. She felt a surge of emotions: confusion, disbelief, curiosity, excitement. She opened her mouth to say something, but before she could, Professor Park continued. I know this is wrong. I know this is impossible. I know this is. But I can't help it. I've tried to suppress my feelings for you, but they only grew stronger. I've tried to ignore you, but I only wanted you more. I've tried to avoid you, but I only missed you more. He paused, looking into her eyes with intensity. I love you, YN. I love you more than anything, he said, his voice breaking. Tears welled up in YN's eyes as she realized her own, for her professor had grown stronger as well. She felt a warmth in her chest as she heard him say those words. She leaned in closer and whispered, I love you too, Jimin. They kissed softly, sealing their confession. Their love story, once hidden behind jealousy and insecurity, blossomed into a passionate and genuine romance. They faced challenges and judgments from others, but together they proved that love could transcend even the coldest of exteriors.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some food in you. Step 3.
Love found in the most unexpected places can be the most beautiful of all.
Today's gonna be a good day. Wake up. Today's gonna be a good day. Wake up. Today's gonna be a good day. Wake